All right, let's have a look, guys, at the top 20 players in fantasy basketball over the last 2 weeks. We'll start at the top. The best place for us to start. Number one player over that last 2 weeks has been Anthony Davis. I'd imagine he just sticks as the number one player for the rest of the season. There'll be some ups and downs, of course, but this is exactly what we thought Davis would be, and he is being what we thought he would be. The number two player is the astronaut, Steph Curry. He is averaging over the last 2 weeks 29 points with 5.5 triples, 5.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 1.5 steals. And the percentages, of course, are elite, especially 97% from the free throw line. I think he's missed one free throw over those last 6 games, and on 6 attempts per game. That is a massive, massive boon to that category for you. And number 3 is James Harden. Not really too much surprise with those top 3 players. Harden's averaging almost 32 points with 6 rebounds and 7 assists, and his assists actually could be higher than that. He's a guy that had those double-digit assists a couple of seasons ago. Still 1.3 steals. The efficiency, a real surprise, 49% for Harden and 87 from the line on 10 attempts per game. That's your top 3. I think those guys are going to be around the top 3 mark for the majority of this season, with probably Davis coming first, Harden second, Curry third. But over the last 2 weeks, we're seeing these guys start to re-establish themselves or assert themselves as those top fantasy players, and that's sort of how I imagine a lot of this is going to run for the rest of the season. There's a couple of these guys who are a little bit anomalous in this top 20 today. The number 4 player is anomalous there because I'm doing it on a per-game basis. So just a quick mention of Al Horford, who only played the 1 game in the last 2 weeks but had 19-12 with 4 blocks. So that pushes him at number 4, but of course that's not realistic for him to be in that area, and he's out at the moment with that knee issue. Number 5 is one of the more interesting ones, and that's Paul George of the Oklahoma City Thunder. 29-8 with 4.5 assists and 2 steals. I thought that some of his numbers would drop a little bit with Russell Westbrook coming back, but they really haven't. The assist numbers, which were quite high with Westbrook out, have come back a little bit, but they're still pretty good. He's providing defensive numbers, but the real issue here, the real change in what George is doing, and he struggled a little bit to begin the season, is the efficiency. 52% from the field over his last 7 games, including 45% from 3. He was a massive steal. You could have ESPN had him pre-ranked at about 29 in the preseason process, which was obviously ridiculous. He was a guy that should have been in that 10 to 13 type of a range, and he is far exceeding that. Doing much better than I even anticipated he'd be able to do. Really fantastic stuff from George, and this is about the same zone where he is over the course of the season as well, in that 5 to 6 range. Number 6 is the fun guy.
I'm a fun guy.
Kawhi Leonard, 29-8 with 2 steals, almost 3 threes, and elite efficiency as well. This is I mentioned at the start of the season I thought Kawhi could be a top 5 player this season. I wouldn't draft him there, but you could get him there, and I would have no hesitation in taking him anywhere outside that top 8 zone, in the top 7. I think I had him as the 8th player. And he's providing that. I think the back-to-backs are going to be done in terms of resting with him moving forward. He had that injury across the weekend, but he's back in action now. And just doing what we saw from him 2 seasons ago in San Antonio, but playing more minutes and being overall more productive. The number 7 player over the last 2 weeks is Karl Anthony Towns. So much of his value, it's just going to come down to the blocks. He's averaging 26 and 11, but 3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 2.3 blocks is what takes him from being a guy who's around 18 to being the guy who's number 7. He also has that efficiency back up 51% from the field, although weirdly 75% from the line, which is usually one of his big strengths. I think he hovers around this zone. I don't think he's outperforming anything. This is a reasonable expectation for Towns for the rest of the year. Drew Holiday at number 8, really strong stuff from Drew. 22, 3, and 8. 2.7 steals is elite. 48% from the field and 82% from the line now. His free throws had struggled to begin this season, but starting to come back into line with what he's done throughout his career. Maybe when Lord Alfred Payton returns, some of Holiday's numbers do decline somewhat, but especially the assists, but he's still going to be a pretty solid top 20 player. Nick Jokic in at number 9, really putting up to some big numbers with Millsap injured and Gary Harris out. 21.5 points, 11 rebounds, 8.5 assists, 2 steals on 51 and 86%, and still can't hit threes. Only 21% of his three-pointers. If that falls in, then we're talking about a top 5 player here. You should be treating him always as a first rounder, in my opinion. You could have got him for a 2nd or 3rd round price a couple of weeks ago in trade discussions, and he's back into his rightful spot inside that top 10. Kevin Durant has taken a hit with Steph Curry back. He's the 10th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. The numbers are still good, but he's not putting up 40% usage and 30 plus points. He's down at 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 6.5 assists. The legendary efficiency is still there. And his blocks are well down as well, 0.3 blocks per game, and that's something that he normally can provide some value in. But that usage where he was that number 3 ranked guy for that period where Steph was out was never going to continue, and we're seeing that play out now. Another player in the top 20 with just the one game played, that's Devin Booker, 28, 7, and 7 in his return game on 63% shooting. This is a little bit high, especially that field goal percentage, but he, I think, is a top 20 player. Maybe his assists take somewhat of a hit if they're going to play Austin Rivers or DeAnthony Melton next to him. But I'm not overly worried. Again, that first game back he played with Melton and had 28, 7, and 7. He's a pretty strong top 20 guy. Probably the biggest surprise in this top 20 is De'Aaron Fox coming in at number 12, 22 points, 2.5 rebounds. That's really low. 7.6 assists and 2.1 steals. The efficiency is fantastic from Foxy. 55% from the field. He's not, for a guy that was barely clinging to 43% last season, being able to get to that level is impressive. He has had some weird, wild rides. I believe a couple of weeks ago he was on my undervalued players because his ranking had dropped to about 130th due to a stretch of poor shooting from De'Aaron Fox. But as soon as the shooting comes back around, everything else follows. The scoring increases, he gets more assists, the playing time looks better, and we're seeing that play out at the moment for Fox, who's the 12th ranked player. Now that 55% from the field and the 46% from the line is not something that's going to... Sorry, not from the line, from three-point land. It's not something that's going to continue, I don't think, for De'Aaron Fox. But he can be, or he should be, a pretty comfortable top 45, maybe top 35 guy the rest of the way. Just expecting him as a top 50 player is probably not prudent to put that sort of faith in him. The number 13 player is the process, Joel Embiid, just hovering around that end of the first round zone, which is about where we expect him to be, 26 and 13. The blocks have dipped, 1.5 blocks, 52 and 76%. This is just right on consistent what Joel Embiid does on a regular basis. Damian Lillard comes in at number 14, 26, 5 and 5 with a steal, 47 and 87. Very hard to look at what Lillard's doing there and go, that's unsustainable, or to look at it and go, that's got a huge area for improvement. I think this is just about where he is in this type of an area, and you should be pretty comfortable with that performance. While Kyrie Irving, pretty similarly, at number 15, averaging 24.5 with 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 1.6 steals, and his legendary point guard efficiency back on track as well, 48% from the field. Another guy that you should be looking at as that second round type of player for the rest of the season. Number 16, Victor Oladipo is back from his knee injury. Only the 3 games, averaging 17, 6, and 7, but those steals which propelled him to the 10th ranked spot last season were back in full force. 5 steals last game, 2.7 steals across those 3 games. 43 and 86, no blocks, that'll come up. The steals will probably come down because he hasn't been as active on that end this season, but he's going to be that guy. I think more likely to be a guy in the 20s than a guy pushing towards the first round sort of an area. Number 17 and number 18 are 2 teammates, Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler. Simmons comes in at 17, averaging 17, 10, and 8. Big steals, big blocks, big field goal percentage, terrible free throw percentage. Exactly what you'd expect from Ben Simmons. Well, general soreness, Jimmy Butler's back from his groin injury. He's playing only 28 minutes a night over the last 4 games, but averaging 24, 5, and 3 with 1.3 steals and shooting fantastic. 51 from the field and 44 from 3. There's probably due some regression there, but there's also a progression coming in his playing time. He won't be getting 28 minutes a night, and that's going to bump his numbers up, and he'll be pretty solid in this second round range. Number 19, many people will be a little bit surprised to see Giannis Antetokounmpo this far down. 33 minutes a night for Giannis. He missed a game in that time frame with a neck injury, averaging 22, 13, and 6, but only 0.6 steals, 1.2 blocks, 61% from the field is obviously fantastic, but it's those free throws. Under 70% on 8.6 attempts is an absolutely massive negative for Antetokounmpo. One of the biggest negatives in that whole area of the top 20. Not the largest negative. In fact, the largest negative category is the guy at number 20, which we'll talk about, Russell Westbrook, in a second. But Antetokounmpo is an issue there. Doesn't hit threes, and when the steals drop off and the scoring's not at 27 a game, then he's not that top 10 sort of a player, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. Number 20 is Russell Westbrook, averaging a triple-double again this season, 17, 11, and 10 over the last 2 weeks with 3 steals. The percentages are absolutely horrendous. 36% from the field, 57% from the free throw line, 29% from three. That is a study in inefficiency if we've ever seen it. I just think that you have to be punting free throws at this point with Westbrook, and probably field goal percentage. He just is really, really bad in both of those categories. That rounds out the top 20. Apologies to Brad Beal, Kyle Kuzma, John Wall, and Rudy Gay, who were the next four outside the top 20. And that is those top 20 guys. So guys, hope you enjoyed that portion of the show.